Okay, so imagine this. You're trying to build a website from scratch,
Yeah.
but you're not using a computer. You're using a whiteboard.
Mm-hmm.
And someone's staring over your shoulder the whole time, judging your every line of code.
Oh, man, that sounds a little stressful, like
Yeah.
a lot stressful.
Right. That's basically the reality for anyone going through coding interviews, especially at those big tech companies.
Yeah, it's definitely a high pressure situation.
So to help us all navigate this, today we are diving deep into Cracking the Coding Interview.
Great book.
This book's like a Bible for anyone who even thinks about working at Google or Apple.
Right. And what I really like about it is it's not about just like memorizing a bunch of answers. It's about really understanding what those interviewers are looking for.
It's like they want to see your brain work, not just, regurgitate facts.
Mhm.
So let's break down the interview process a bit. Our source had some good insights on both Google and Apple and how they handle things.
It's pretty interesting how different those two are, actually. Like at Google, it's
Yeah.
much more of a formal, multi-step thing. You've got multiple interviews, usually a whole hiring committee.
Right.
It's not just one person making that decision.
Whereas Apple, they seem to keep it surprisingly low-key. Like the book even mentioned your future manager taking you to lunch.
Yeah, it's a little more, I guess, personality focused.
Right.
Like, are you a good fit for the team?
Yeah.
I bet they're looking at how many breadsticks you can fit in your mouth or something.
I mean, casual doesn't mean they're not paying attention.
Exactly.
But one thing that was consistent, you got to show passion.
Oh, yeah. Huge.
Especially at Apple, like they want to see that you love their products.
Absolutely. Like, you're not just there for the paycheck. You know what I mean?
You're there because you're like, I need the new iPhone 15.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so you've landed the interview. Nerves are probably shot.
Totally.
Let's talk about strategy. This book talks about these 7 steps to tackle coding problems.
Yeah.
What are those all about?
So this is where it gets really interesting because it's not about like memorizing those steps like a recipe. It's more about understanding the thought process that they represent.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And really, those steps, they mirror how experienced engineers actually approach problems in the real world.
So it's kind of like a framework for your thinking. One of those steps that kind of jumped out was the brute force method. And as someone who doesn't code every day, I was like, brute force? What is that?
Yeah. So it can be kind of tempting to want to jump to like the most elegant solution, right?
Right.
But the book makes this point that sometimes just showing that you can break a problem down, even if it's not the smartest solution initially, can be incredibly valuable.
It shows you can think through things systematically.
Right. In fact, sometimes interviewers, they'll even kind of steer you towards that brute force approach just to see how you think.
Oh, interesting.
And this ties into the idea of big O notation, which always sounds a lot scarier than it actually is.
Yeah, big O notation. That sounds intimidating. For those listening who aren't, coding every day, break that down for us. What is that and why should we care?
Okay, so imagine you're taking a road trip.
Yeah,
You could drive a gas guzzler that gets terrible mileage.
right.
Or you could drive a super fuel-efficient car that, sips on gas.
Yeah.
Big O notation is basically telling you how fuel efficient your code is, especially as the data that you're dealing with gets bigger and bigger. It's about how your code scales,
Okay.
you know?
So it's not just about getting the right answer. It's about how efficient your code is when you scale it.
Precisely.
Okay.
So interviewers care about that because in the real world, that efficiency translates to time and resources.
Right. You don't want your app to crash when a million people try to use it.
Exactly.
Okay. So we talked about the technical side a bit here, but let's talk about those dreaded behavioral interview questions.
Ah, yes, the dreaded "tell me about a time you failed" questions.
Yes.
Right.
Nobody likes those.
Which a lot of people find a lot trickier, right? Because you don't have code to hide behind.
It feels more subjective. Like, are they psychoanalyzing me right now?
Yeah, it can definitely feel that way.
Yeah.
But really what they're looking for is evidence of those soft skills,
Okay.
right? Things like, can you communicate clearly? Can you work with a team?
Right.
How do you approach problem solving?
Okay, so how do we tackle these dreaded questions then?
So the book actually gives a great tip for this, which is focus on the action.
Focus on the action.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're probably familiar with the STAR method:
The STAR method, yeah.
situation, task, action, and result. A lot of times they'll describe the situation, maybe even the task,
Yeah.
but then they just kind of gloss over the action part.
They're like, we overcame the challenge.
Yeah.
End of story.
Exactly.
Right.
But what you really want to do is like paint a picture, break it down, be specific. The book had this example of a candidate who was asked about a time they had to resolve a conflict with a teammate, right? And instead of just saying, oh, we talked it out, they went deeper.
Okay.
They talked about how they actively listened to their teammates' perspective. They identified common goals. And ultimately, they found a compromise that worked for everyone.
So it's about showing, not just telling.
Exactly.
Because that level of detail really demonstrates that you actually did something.
Absolutely. And it shows those critical thinking skills, that emotional intelligence. Companies eat that up.
Right.
That's gold.
So you've nailed the technical part.
Yeah.
You aced those behavioral questions. What happens next?
Right.
The waiting game.
Oh, the waiting game is the worst.
It's torture. You're constantly refreshing your inbox.
Right. And then, you finally hear back. And, well, there's two main possibilities, right?
Yeah.
Best case scenario, you get that congratulations email.
Yes.
But sometimes,
It's a no.
rejection.
Rejection hurts,
Yeah.
especially in this field. It's brutal out there.
It's tough.
And even when you get rejected, the book emphasizes being professional about it.
Oh, absolutely. It's super important to, even though it's disappointing, remember there's a person on the other end of that email. A simple thank you to the recruiter, expressing your disappointment professionally, maybe even ask about timelines for reapplying.
Right.
That speaks volumes about your character.
Shows you're thinking long term. And speaking of thinking long term, the book also emphasizes that learning doesn't stop after the interview, even if you get the job.
100%. Companies, they're not just looking for someone who memorized a bunch of stuff right before an interview. They're looking for people who are demonstrably smart, who can code, who are constantly learning and pushing themselves.
And that's where personal projects come in.
Yeah.
Those are so important.
Personal projects are gold on a resume because it shows that you actually enjoy coding.
Right. You're not just doing it to, get a paycheck.
Exactly. It's like you're saying, hey, I love this so much. I even do it in my free time.
Right. Exactly.
And it doesn't even have to be this groundbreaking thing. It could be something as simple as I don't know, building a website for a local business. Or creating a simple mobile game.
Or finally automating that to-do list so you don't forget the milk at the store.
Right. Exactly.
And the million things you could do.
And it shows initiative, creativity, the ability to take your skills and actually apply them to real world problems, which is exactly what employers want to see. And honestly, the learning that happens during those personal projects, that's invaluable.
Yeah, it's all about having that growth mindset, always trying to learn new things. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the technical side, algorithms, data structures, big O notation. But cracking the coding interview also dives into something else that's really important, which is understanding the company, understanding the role, especially at a place like Apple.
It's huge. And, at Google, your interviewer might be on a completely different team working on a completely different project than you. So having that broader understanding of, what Google's doing, what their products are, that's really, really key.
Versus, like you said, at Apple, it's much more focused on the team because that interviewer might actually end up being your manager.
Exactly.
So it's showing that you understand the team's work, how you fit in,
yes,
how your skills align with their goals.
Yes.
That becomes even more important.
Absolutely. And of course, then there's that kind of infamous culture fit.
Oh, yeah. You can be the best coder in the world, but if you don't fit the culture,
it's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
And every company has their own, personality, like Google.
Yeah.
Super data driven, big emphasis on innovation.
Yeah.
You got to be comfortable in that kind of environment.
And then Apple, of course, is all about that elegant design, the user experience.
Right.
Everything has to be perfect. So knowing how to, tailor your answers, maybe even how you present yourself to reflect those values.
It makes a difference.
It can make a huge difference.
It really shows them that you're not just looking for any job in tech. You're specifically passionate about working at their company. You want to contribute to their mission.
They're you got to find that right puzzle piece, not only do your skills have to fit, but your personality, your values.
The whole package.
The whole package has to fit with the company.
It's true.
Okay. So before we wrap up, I think we should address the elephant in the room, which is the fear factor.
Oh, yeah.
Because these interviews are intimidating.
Absolutely. Even for seasoned people in tech.
Oh, yeah.
It's scary.
You walk into that room and it's
yeah,
your brain just goes blank.
Totally. But the book actually makes a good point, which is a lot of times those scary technical questions, They're not actually about specialized knowledge.
Okay. So they're not asking me to, like, write the entire Google search algorithm on the whiteboard.
Probably not.
Okay, good to know. So what are they looking for then with those tough questions?
Honestly, problem-solving skills. Can you break a complex problem down into smaller, manageable steps?
Right.
Can you think critically even when you're under pressure? Can you explain your thought process clearly?
Yeah.
And those are things that, like, those translate to any programming language, any technical challenge.
No, even if I don't have, like, the perfect answer memorized, if I can show them how I think,
That's huge.
that can still impress them.
Absolutely. The book gives this example, even questions about things that seem really obscure, like low-level system design or something specific to Google's internal systems.
Yeah.
A lot of times, those questions are really just getting at those core problem-solving skills.
It's not about what you know. It's about how you think. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So it's less about, like, rote memorization and more about having those strong fundamentals and knowing how to apply them in different scenarios.
Exactly. And those are things that you can absolutely get better at with practice.
Yeah, that's actually really encouraging. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into cracking the coding interview, is there one final piece of advice you would give to our listeners who are maybe about to go through this process themselves?
Remember that while the technical stuff is obviously super important,
Wow.
it's only one part of the puzzle, Showcasing your passion, showing that you're eager to learn and grow,
Right.
and that you're genuinely interested in the company, what they're doing,
Yeah.
that can really make you stand out.
It's about being more than just a coder. It's about being a thinker, a problem solver, someone who's excited about the possibilities.
I love that.
So, to all our listeners out there who are prepping for those coding interviews, embrace the challenge, stay curious, never stop learning.
Here.
And who knows, maybe someday you'll be sharing your own coding interview success story on a podcast like this.
That's right. You got this.
Thanks for diving in with us today.